Izuku Midoriya is now in the world of My Hero Academia, where quirks run rampant, and many people have powers ranging from looking like a washing machine to basically being able to shoot explosions out of your body. Now, Izuku Midoriya was always a rowdy kid, and for the fact is, he was always a rowdy kid. He is very rowdy. He's very kind of, you know, out there. He's always super aggressive and rowdy, just from the ages, like, you know, from when he was born to at the age of about 4. And there would be a reason for this, because soon he would go see the doctor, and he would go see the doctor with his mother, of course, and they would learn that he has a special type of quirk. And this quirk would be deemed a Spartan Quirk. A Spartan Quirk has many different things, but the easiest way to explain it is that Izuku is very similar to a Spartan. Now, there's a lot of question marks when you say stuff like that, but it kind of explains why he's so aggressive, why he's not timid at all. He's very outward and confident. Izuku is just ready to go at all times. Like, he is completely and utterly ready. But on top of that, he's still got the aspects of him that is like a student of this game, a student of being a hero. So he is still pretty damn intelligent in terms of researching and finding new things out and doing this or doing that or studying different heroes. He still does all of those things as well. But on top of that, he has this Spartan quirk. But like I said, there's very little to be known about this quirk. And the doctor even says that it seems that he has kind of different type of muscle growth. It seems like he'll probably have a little bit of extra strength and maybe a little bit extra speed and stuff like that, but he literally doesn't know anything else. So he tells him that he's gonna have to kind of deal throughout life here trying to learn what his quirk can truly do, in which Izuku doesn't have a problem with this, and his mother is thinking that, well, the kid's already aggressive, the kid's already, like, you know, super confident, and he wants to get into trouble from time to time. Maybe give him a little bit of discipline, and that would be really good for him. So that's what she's going to do. She decides that the best thing for her to do for Izuku is to probably put him in some sort of martial arts. And that's exactly what she actually does for a while. All the way up until he's, well, you know, of age of, you know, around 15. He's in martial arts, he trains with different weapons, and he learns to kind of center himself a little bit, but he still controls, or he still has that good bit of anger and that good bit of just pride. It seems like Izuku is very prideful. He's outward with his pride as well, and he's always passionate about everything that he cares about, and that includes stuff like fighting. That includes stuff like hero work, in terms of the hero studies that he does put himself through. But throughout this time, he trains, he works hard, and his quirk continues to show more and more. I mean, nobody's gonna mess with this version of Izuku. No one's gonna mess with this version of Deku. At the end of the day, they would be terrified of him. Because if someone tries to bully him, well, let's just say they get beat down pretty damn bad, and they will not be making any mistakes ever again. And Izuku is just flat out shows every single person that you don't mess with him, that you don't even touch him, and you don't even rub him the wrong way. Because, well, if you do, I mean, he will put you on the ground in a matter of seconds. And he shows this to Bakugo when Bakugo tries to kind of assert his quote-unquote dominance in a way, where he's kind of just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fight this guy, and he's not gonna do anything about it. You know, he's weak. Like, he doesn't have a normal quirk. Like, I have a quirk that shoots explosions, but Izuku's just full-on durability. When Bakugo tries to cheap shot him one day, especially around the age of about 14 or maybe about 15, that he would try to cheap shot him, and it would not go very well, not one freaking bit, because Izuku would tank the explosion, and it seems as if Izuku would just get stronger from tanking that explosion, walking forward and slamming Bakugo into the ground, and then jumping, landing one boot on Bakugo's chest, as if it's some Spartan-like slam. And it is kind of brutal to see because everyone stands around as Bakugo tries to grasp for air, but Izuku lets go of him and tells them that he'll be fine, that he'll be getting his air back in about 10 seconds. After 10 seconds would pass, that's exactly what would happen. He would just get his air back just like that, and it would be pretty crazy that he was able to not only predict when Bakugo would, be able to breathe again, but also the fact that he did not at all care that Bakugo attacked him, but he definitely made it known that it was going to have consequences at the end of the day, and that's exactly what Izuku showed. Now, he would go through the whole, teacher says that they want to be heroes, or heroes and stuff like that, and it was a pretty basic day, and Izuku would just be kind of doing his normal studying, looking about his combat tactics, looking at various different heroes that he could model his fighting style after, and even thinks to himself that he would really love to have actual weaponry and utilize actual weaponry in, well, the act of being a hero. He knows that you're not supposed to kill, and you're not supposed to hurt, or you're not supposed to at least, end the lives of certain people. But at the same time, Izuku is like, you know what? I'm going to do what needs to be done to protect those who are behind me, to protect those that are in need. And Izuku is showing that pride that he's going to be the strongest, even if he can't necessarily end lives of different villains. But that's beyond the point. But he continues to study these things as school goes along and along and along. And eventually, well, he would head out. He would head out of the school, and he would be studying through his books, and he would be writing things down that he feels could be beneficial, in which when he's walking under a tunnel of some sorts, or going through a tunnel of some sorts, it seems that some random kind of goob or random glob of something like a slime, or what we know as the sludge villain, would appear out of nowhere. Izuku would look to his side, immediately grabbing something that is kind of like a lid of a trash can, and he bangs his arm on that lid as vibrations would spread across the tunnel, and he would look toward the sludge villain, telling him that if he dares step past, that this right here will be his undoing. In which Izuku would stand his ground as the sludge villain would tell him that he's going to take his body, charging forward, but the sludge villain would ring extremely bad, would ring out in pain, and would yell out in pain as Izuku would slam the shield-like item, but it's more of like a trash can lid, on the sludge villain, hitting it, and the vibrations would bounce off of the entire area, stopping the sludge villain in its tracks instantly, flat out instantly, just stops him in his tracks. The sludge villain would splatter almost everywhere, with only a small bit of him left as it charges, or the rest of it charges at Izuku, and Izuku slams on the trash can lid once again as the vibrations would sound bouncing off the area. And it's as if Izuku is getting stronger and stronger throughout this time, and it's something that is terrifying for, the sludge villain. Eventually, the villain is in pieces, and All Might would come up thinking that the villain would still be there, and would actually throw a punch, saying Detroit Smash, as the wind pressure itself would go to basically strike Izuku. But Izuku would stand his ground, and he would block it with his shield, but it's more like a trash can, like I said, or trash can lid, blocking it entirely. And All Might is in complete shock. Sorry, kid, he didn't mean to actually hit him. But Izuku would brush him off, saying that it's really no worries, that he'll help him clean this up, and then he can go about his day normally. And it is an honor to meet someone as, renowned as him. And saying that All Might has been a great inspiration to many, even though his, his fight style is a little bit not very technical, and it's not the best way he could definitely approach actually utilizing the power he really has. In which All Might looks at him and thinks, well, this kid knows what he's talking about. It's pretty obvious that the kid is pretty smart, especially being somebody like him. In which he would ask if he's a new hero or something like that, but Izuku says that no, he's actually not even in hero school yet. In which All Might would be shocked, saying that he looks like a grown man. Izuku looks at his arms and his body, and he says, well, honestly, I haven't even really thought about that. but I guess I do kind of look older than most of my classmates. And he's like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense, and makes a lot of sense why all the females are kind of, you know, very weird around him, you could say. But Izuku kind of just shrugs it off and says that he'll be going out to UA High School in about 10 months ish, and he tells him that he's excited to see what he'll be able to do against some of the other up-and-coming heroes or up-and-coming students that want to be heroes. In which, well, let's just say All Might tells him, hey kid, like, you're gonna do a great job. I mean, I can definitely tell. And All Might tells him that he'll actually be teaching there very soon, so he hopes to teach the kid something. But from what he sees right now, it seems like the kid already has a pretty good grasp on what the hell is going on in general, so he's sure that he won't really need that much help, at least from him. But still, he says that he is going to be helping out to the best of his abilities, or helping out where he can, that is for sure. Izuku, after, you know, some time, of course, would go about his training regimen over the next like 10 months, and he would study and stuff like that, all the good stuff that he has to get done leading up into the UA entrance exam. And he would be, well, really well prepared. He would even get clearance that he would be allowed to use weaponry since he's so skilled with it. And basically, since he has the full capabilities of utilizing it, he's told as long as he doesn't, you know, hurt any students or anything, he should be good for the foreseeable future. But in terms of actual hero work in the future, he probably won't be able to use any lethal weapons. Any weapons with extremely sharp tips, or something like that, or at least not until he's a full-fledged hero. But for the most part, in training and stuff like that, he definitely can use it. And if we're talking about, you know, simple stuff or, you know, simple weaponry, he could probably utilize it in the act of being a hero. But for now, blunt weapons would definitely be more beneficial. In which Izuku says, or kind of understands, that he is pretty damn efficient with a bow staff on top of it. So he should be okay at the end of the day. He can use the bow staff similar to a spear, and also he could utilize a shield as well, since that is non-lethal. Now, this would lead, after all the training, would lead him to the UA entrance exam. And at the start of the UA entrance exam, you have the normal written portion. The written portion is pretty basic. He's able to answer some questions, get through that pretty easily, and the UA entrance exam would involve the defeating of a large amount of robots. Izuku would take his shield and also his spear, and would actually even be approached by someone by the name of Tenya Ida, saying that he shouldn't be allowed to utilize those things, but Izuku says he has full clearance and he should really mind his own damn business, because, well, don't jump in his business or he's about to get hit in the face, like right now. In which Tenya would be pretty shocked that the guy just threatened him, but Izuku slams his spear on the ground and tells him enough is enough and just focus on what he needs to focus on. Izuku would then await the gates to open, and as they do, he would go charging out in a complete blitz of speed. It's as if it's some Spartan charge. He has a shield in front, spear in front of him, or it's shield in front and then spear pointing forward, and he would charge through robot after robot. The spear seemingly even stronger than what he thought, and it seems as if the sharpness of the spear isn't even really what matters very much. It seems like his connection to the weapon allows him to kind of do as he wish, and as brutal as he wants to destroy a robot, he can do exactly like that. But he can also be a little bit more tame with his weaponry, seemingly adding a little bit of bluntness so it doesn't, you know, completely tear through whatever he touches. For the most part, though, he just does a Spartan charge through many of the robots, but he still is pretty limited in terms of how he gets to each robot. So it's not like he would, you know, get some insane score right off the bat. But what really makes it the difference is this. The difference is when somebody was on the ground, somebody was hurt. Well, let's just say Izuku sees this as a chance to protect somebody, taking his shield, going over to the girl that's on the ground by the name of Ochaku Uraka, and as the 0-point robot walks forward about to crush them, well, Izuku would put his shield up, and he would slam his spear on the shield, and it's as if he's signaling for more strength, signaling for more power, And as the robot would go to stomp on him, he would put the shield on the foot of the robot, and he would say, "This is for Sparta," as he pushes off the shield, slinging the giant robot backwards. And as it slams to the ground, Izuku would come jumping in, slamming his spear right into the main circuitry of the robot, disabling the 0-point robots. He would rip the spear out of the robots and slam his shield once again, as it seems as if this aura, this like reddish kind of aura, would kind of steam off of him, and everybody would be in shock about what's happening and what he's capable of doing. But Izuku is very loud and boisterous about what he just got done. But soon he would go over, help the girl up, bring her to Recovery Girl, and just leave her there. Before she could even say thank you, before she can even thank him in general or say a word, he's gone. He doesn't care about a thank you. He's just there to protect and to also absolutely dominate. And that's what he did. And he doesn't really know these people very well and doesn't know her at all. So it's not like he's going to be all buddy or anything like that. He hasn't really met anybody that he wants to be good friends with, or build a crew with, or even build kind of like his own group of people that would be his quote unquote army in some way, right? He doesn't really care about all that, and he hasn't really been around anybody that makes him feel as if this would be a good person to bring into the friend group now, or bring into kind of like that soldier's platoon type of mindset, or that soldier's kind of army type of mindset. Now, with that said, we have an Izuku Midoriya who finishes up the UA entrance exam, and he gets a pretty damn high score for it. And actually, All Might would even tell him that he originally wouldn't have gotten the highest score in the exam, but there was a hidden portion, being that of the hero portion of the exam, or the rescue portion of the exam, in which he got quite a few points because of this. And it's pretty crazy that he's able to get so many points from this specifically, because he had, a good amount of points through just destroying robots, but he got a ton through rescuing that girl, in which Izuku does realize, hey, that makes a lot of sense, right? Rescuing and protecting, that's all part of the job as well. It's not just breaking and destroying robots. That's ridiculous. Protecting is a big part of the job, and he was able to do so in a pretty efficient way. This would then lead Izuku to actually being the #1 student, but just by a little bit. Like I said, he wasn't the best at destroying robots. He fell a little bit behind because his speed may be lacking just a little bit at this moment, but in the future, that could all change massively. But he was able to do it because of, his ability to actually protect, leading him to being the #1 student in the exam, and also leading him to, going on to UA and being in Class 1A. And this would be perfect. His first day of Class 1A or UA High School in Class 1A would begin, and Izuku would head in, and he would be very serious. He would be very focused, completely and utterly locked in. He's not really thinking about what other people are doing. Shoot, even Bakugo would come in and try to get his goat and try to say things to him, but Izuku is not having any of it. He tells Bakugo he better remember the last time he started messing with him, because last time he started messing with him, it didn't end very well for him. So just keep that in mind, and he should probably stay away from actually conflicting with him, and it'd probably be the best for both of them. And that includes the safety of Bakugo, and obviously Izuku not getting expelled and stuff like that. Now, Aizawa would show up, and we would have the normal interaction and so on about so-called, that they're going, oh yeah, aren't we supposed to have orientation and stuff? But no, Aizawa's like, no, we're not doing all that. We're not doing it. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to test your quirks. And that's exactly what happens, right? Izuku isn't going to be amazing at every single thing. He's not going to be amazing at one thing specifically or anything like that. His ball throw is going to be pretty damn strong, but it's not going to be to the point of something insane. Bakugo will beat him in the ball throw, but everything else, all together, is something that is pretty damn good, right? the sprint, Izuku would just do something he calls a Spartan leap, and he'll leap from one end to the other actually faster than really anybody could actually, you know, run or sprint after him with. And he would just leap across, and Izuku would easily, and I mean easily, get one of the higher scores in that portion of the exam. Maybe the only person that would be faster than him might be Tenya Ida, but that leap is no freaking joke. He could leap across that area and that kind of, you know, that sequence very easily. And there's a lot of things that he would continue to show off and do better than a lot of people at, but he would kind of, you know, he would waver from rank maybe 1 to rank 5 depending on the scenario. His side steps were pretty good. The grip strength, he's pretty damn strong. You know, most of the things he does really well at. And maybe he's not getting number 1 at every single turn, but he's doing really well at every single time or every single thing. So if he doesn't get number 1, he's definitely getting in the top 3. Like, there's no joke about that. But there's a good chance just from his overall rankings, just every ranking, every single one being really good placement, he probably would end up being the number 1, quote unquote. Even when some people would think like, wow, it feels like Izuku wasn't at the top of really anything, but he was pretty damn good at everything, right? Like, he was pretty damn good at most things that they were able to do. So of course he would be safe from expulsion, which that's the whole thing, but Aizawa would kind of just threaten it without actually threatening it. Like, he probably would expel someone like Hagakure, but then just bring her back right after. So it'd be pretty basic. Then we would lead into the next situation or the next day, and that would be, well, training with All Might. And that training with All Might is a very basic one, but is something that Izuku probably is decently excited about. Izuku hears that it's heroes versus villains training, so he's actually going to be able to take on some of his fellow classmates, which is something that is gonna be decently interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, this sounds pretty damn cool to take on some of your classmates and, you know, do like train against them and stuff like that. So when he gets on his hero outfit, which his hero outfit would be very Spartan like, donning some armor and also a shield and also a long bow staff, being that he doesn't want to utilize an actual spear for the most part, because he doesn't want to, like, you know, maim somebody. So he sticks with the bow staff, and as he's moving around and feeling the shield and stuff like that, he would slam the bow staff on the shield, or excuse me, would slam the bow staff on the shield, and he would feel like, wow, this feels good, this feels solid, like I feel strong and ready to go. And Izuku would just get ready for his turn at the whole heroes versus villains, being that the hero team would be him and Ochako, and then the villains would be Tenya Ida and Bakugo. Now, the explanation of this is pretty damn basic. Heroes need to touch the bomb and then they win. The villains need to stall them out for 5 minutes or capture both the heroes, and then they win. Now, Izuku is a pretty good strategist and gives a decent plan to Ochako, but even tells her, like, hey, don't take a fight that you feel that you can't actually win. Don't take any unnecessary risks. There's no point. Fight with him and they're going to win. And he doesn't mean that in any prideful or cocky way. He means that they are now a team, that they are a duo of warriors, that they will work together. It doesn't matter who's the strongest or the weakest. They're only as strong as their weakest link, but they are strongest together if their links don't get, you know, pushed away. So the exercise would start, and Izuku immediately says, stick with him and stick close. And as they walk toward the staircase, he hears Bakugo charge forward, and Izuku slams on his shield as Bakugo comes spiraling down with explosions, in which Izuku would shield bash him immediately into a wall, and Ochako would tap him, floating him in the air, and Izuku would jump up and slam Bakugo into the ground, and she immediately would use the capture tape to knock Bakugo out of this drill, or the training session, in which Ochako says that was insane, like to the point where it felt as if she could coordinate with him without even thinking. Like, their moves were in sync entirely. in which Izuku kind of says that a good team will always be that way, and maybe that has something to do with his quirk. He would even tell her that they'll talk more about this after the drill, but they'll just keep working together, and they'll end this heroes versus villains training quicker than you could possibly imagine. And when they meet up with Tenya Ida, let's just say the same thing or something very similar would happen as well. They would approach Tenya in perfect unison, narrowing him down to a corner of the room, and he gets shield bashed into the side of the wall and gets floated up and then pinned to the ground, and immediately is captured once again. And in a matter of about 35 to 40 seconds, Izuku and Ochako are the winners. But there's something weird about this. Ochako even says that his quirk must be doing something else. Normally, when she utilizes her quirk, she gets dizzy, she gets groggy, she feels horrible, like she's gonna throw up. In which Izuku hears her out, and he says that maybe it has something to do with his quirk. I mean, seriously, the idea is maybe he's really good at working with other people, and maybe it enhances their quirks. He's not 100% sure, or maybe it kind of nullifies some of the drawbacks. In which Izuku thinks about this for a little bit and tells her that that must be it. The doctor kind of weirdly called this a Spartan Quirk, and that was kind of like the way he would do it, because Izuku act very similar to a prideful Spartan. But maybe it's even further than they thought. Maybe Izuku's idea of being a Spartan is even more than anybody could imagine, because Izuku's Spartan Quirk might actually even affect those around him, as long as they're all working together and in unison, like an army, or like someone that is ready to duel, right? Someone that is a partner. Maybe it's a trio, maybe it's a quad, maybe it's a duo, anything. And it seems like Izuku benefits all of them for just being there. In which Ochako hears this, and frankly, this is a conversation that needs to be talked about later, at least more and more, because I mean, this could be one of the greatest quirks ever for being somebody who works together. In which Izuku nods and says that he agrees. He never thought about his quirk this way. He's only thought about it in a solo fashion. Maybe someone who can fight by himself, someone who is strong by himself. He's never thought of it any other way. But now thinking of it like this, it's very interesting. So they would end their drill, and of course they would head back up to All Might. Everybody would talk for a little bit, and they would watch the other people do their thing, and eventually the day would then be over. And this would lead them into their next training-like session, which their next training session, or kind of training drill type of thing, would involve rescue training, or the USJ. The USJ is made for rescue and made for the facilitation of learning how to rescue people from specific situations. Now, what they don't know is that these students are going to walk into something that they never thought would happen in the first place. Because when they're all on the bus ride over there, when they're all talking, chatting, and saying certain things to each other, you know, asking whose quirk's the best and this and that, in which Ochako completely backs the idea of Izuku being the strongest, even explaining that his quirk has some sort of passive ability that allows him to work better with teammates, which is a wild thing, in which most of them would say, like, well, they don't know if that's even true. I mean, seriously, they're kind of just taking their word for it. But Izuku says that one-on-one, and flat out says it straight up, that one-on-one, nobody is going to be able to take him on, not even close. And he says the only person that would be somewhat of an issue would be the one over there, in which he would point at Shoto Todoroki, saying that dealing with the ice would be a difficult thing, but he's broken through stuff way, way more dense and strong than ice, so he doesn't see it as too much of an issue. Todoroki would tell him that his ice is a little bit more dense than he thinks, in which Izuku would shrug and say luckily they're on the same side then, so maybe they won't even have to figure out who's stronger. In which they would finally arrive at the USJ, and they would be ready for their rescue training from Pro Hero 13. But as all of them would enter, it seems like the USJ, or the training facility, would be under siege of villains all alike. Portals opening up, and Izuku looks on to see these villains approach, but for some reason he gets a read on multiple villains that become obviously the main threats. It's as if this aura emits off of them, and Izuku can tell exactly that they are the main threats, being that of Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and the Nomu. He knows immediately through his senses, through his Spartan Quirk, that these right here are the strongest, and these right here are the ones that are either pulling the strings or leading the forefront of this invasion. The heroes, or the future heroes, with Aizawa and Pro Hero 13 are gonna have to fend off the invasion of the League of Villains. But that is for the next part of What If Deku Had a Spartan Quirk. Izuku Midori is surrounded by his classmates, teachers, and everybody all around him, right? You have heroes, or a couple heroes, and then you have students that have super-like powers, well, being that of quirks, and Izuku stands his ground. He knows that Kurogiri, he knows that the Nomu, and he knows that Shigaraki are the main sources of this villain group, or the main source of the villain group's power. So he wants to stand his ground and take the fight to them. And he makes it very clear to Aizawa that he wants to stand with Aizawa and fight with him as well. And he would slam his quote-unquote bow staff on the ground, and then a spear blade would come out the top of it, in which Aizawa would look at him funny, and Izuku would shrug, saying that, I mean, they had to get some sort of an attachment if he needed lethal weaponry, and frankly, this looks like a situation that he needs lethal weaponry. In which Aizawa would nod slightly, and he would tell the kid to basically protect the others, in which Izuku says that if he stays with Aizawa and they fight together, that Aizawa will be able to benefit from it more than he could imagine. To trust him, let him lead like a Spartan should. Aizawa is kind of hesitant, not wanting to allow the kid to stay in the forefront of all of this, but Izuku tells him to let him lead the charge, and let him use his spear, and let him be his spear and shield. Aizawa would just shake his head like he can't believe that he's about to do this, but he is. He tells Izuku to stay close and to fight alongside of him, and Izuku says exactly what he was thinking. Now let the Spartan lead the way. He would slam his spear on the ground once again, as an aura would surround both Aizawa and Izuku, and he tells, Aizawa would tell Pro Hero 13 to protect the kids and make sure nothing happens to them. Aizawa and Izuku would charge forward, and Aizawa would activate his Erasure Quirk. But as he activates it, guess what? His eyes no longer get dry, in which it completely takes away the drawback, and now Aizawa understands why Izuku told him to allow him to lead the charge. Izuku would go in as everybody's quirks are cancelled, knocking one after another out using his shield, just shield bashing them into the ground. And as Aizawa was wrapping them up with his scarf and flinging them up, into the air, Izuku would come spiraling down, spinning his spear, not like, poking them, of course, but spinning his spear as he slams them all to the ground. In a matter of less than a minute, all of them are wiped out, and all that is left is the villains that are spread out within the USJ, and also the Nomu, and, we have Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Immediately, Shigaraki is taken back by the display that Izuku was able to show, and Izuku tells him flat out that he is not here to hear a word, or not here to hear a word of flattery from the mouth of Shigaraki. That if he says another word, he's going to seal it shut. Izuku would slam his spear on the ground once again, and Aizawa would feel even more power surging through him, and Aizawa would be, seemingly completely refreshed, as if his stamina itself is just surging even more, and it's as if his adrenaline is pumped to the maximum, but it seems as if he's not feeling the after effects of something like that actually happening, which is, let's just say, massively beneficial for someone like Aizawa. Izuku says once again that when that big thing charges at them, let him be the shield. He tells Aizawa that it's going to hurt him, it will, and there's no way around it, but it's better that he takes the brunt of the attacks and Aizawa stays back and utilizes that quirk. In which Aizawa nods his head and tells the kid that it seems like he was prepared for war, in which Izuku says that he was, but he's also prepared to be a hero. Slamming his shield and obviously showing the spear once again, putting the spear slightly pointed in front of him as the Nomu charges forward. Izuku would throw his spear toward the Nomu, and as he does, he can see a visualization in his own eyes of not one spear, but many spears. Tons of spears raining down on the Nomu, and Izuku runs at the Nomu as it's pinned to the ground slightly and smashes his shield against him. As Izuku begins to batter the Nomu with absolute technique and strikes that are made to be lethal, it's obvious that the Nomu has some insane shock absorption and some insane durability. As the Nomu would try and attack Izuku, he would slide under, grabbing his spear, ripping it out of him, as Shigaraki and Kurogiri try to get into the fight. A hand would then come out of a portal about to touch Izuku, but Izuku would immediately place his shield on it as he would stab into the arm. He would twist the spear as he's trying to basically yank Shigaraki through the portal, but the portal would eventually Shigaraki would pull his arm hard, jerking part of the stick as it breaks in half, and Shigaraki would get out of said portal. But one of his arms would be extremely wounded at this point, and well, let's just say Aizawa and Izuku are still able to fend off the Nomu to a large extent. And once, well, the one and only All Might would arrive, things would be shot to course immediately for the League of Villains. The League of Villains would be on the back foot, the other villains now defeated, and Bakugo joining the battle to stop Kurogiri from teleporting. Now his explosions are even stronger with side-by-side combat with Izuku Midoriya. This even allows it so much that Kurogiri can't even stand up. It's as if the explosions feel like absolute hell raining upon him, and it makes it so he's unable to utilize his quirk, at least not to the ability he normally does, because he would reach out to send Shigaraki away as All Might basically batters the Nomu with the help of Izuku, as he would shield bash the Nomu into the ground, as All Might would follow up with multiple Detroits of smash, smashing the Nomu into the ground and into pieces, and eventually Shigaraki would get out through a portal, but with the help of other students, of ice, of explosions, and all of the above, and also Izuku, Kurogiri would be stopped in his tracks, and a Kurogiri would be captured. And this capture of a villain like him is massive for the near future of the heroes. Now, of course, some things would go on. You know, you have the whole evacuation. You have the whole, they would all get back together, you know, like take a little break and then come back to school. But of course, we have the up-and-coming sports festival. And the sports festival would be something very interesting for Izuku, because Izuku is basically a gladiator. At the end of the day, he takes on lots of aspects like a gladiator, or similar to a gladiator, being that he does have a Spartan-like quirk. He would tell everybody in the stadium that he is going to entertain them, and he's going to make sure that they all know without an absolute doubt that he is the strongest. It doesn't matter if he has a shield, doesn't matter if he has a spear, he doesn't need his armor, he doesn't need anything outside of that. All he needs is his will, and all he needs is his fists, and he's going to make sure that everybody understands that fully. He doesn't need weaponry, he doesn't need to hide behind a shield. He is a true Spartan, which everybody would cheer as this amazing speech would rile up the whole crowd. But it probably has a lot to do with his quirk, being that his quirk does have effect with morale. So when he starts, you know, chanting all these things, everybody's super excited. Everybody buys into the idea of the Spartan, and they would then call him that. They would be chanting Spartan, 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 or over and over again, and they would call him basically the green Spartan for the most part because of his hair, in which he wouldn't really like the idea of the green Spartan. That's kind of weird. Spartan's just fine for him, but whatever, it don't matter. So he basically waves them all off and tells them that he's about to put on a show, and then the first event would eventually begin. The first event is simple. I mean, it is literally a obstacle course race. And an obstacle course race, let's just say, isn't the hardest thing in the world. I mean, at the end of the day, an obstacle course race is something that is massively basic, and Izuku would be able to slip through, and just his just natural ability to run, jump, and his speed and his agility and his strength, all of those things would make it very easy for him to get across the area. And when he would get to the, you know, the field of mines, of course this would be a bit of an issue, but his instincts and his abilities as with his Spartan Quirk allows him to actually guide himself through the obstacles of the mines pretty easily, and eventually he would get toward the end, which he would have Bakugo and Todoroki actually right on his tail. So they would be pretty damn close. They would be on his tail, on his back, about to get there, but unfortunately they were not there in time, as they would get right beside him and he would toss them both to the ground, not allowing them to actually and fully catch up to himself. And eventually he would cross that finish line, and everybody would be cheering the name of Spartan. Everybody would be freaking out, everybody would be chanting and all of the above, and everybody would be like, wow, like this guy is truly awesome. This guy is truly amazing, and they give him all the props in the world. And let's just say, when the cavalry battle would begin, if you're not saying that you want to be with Izuku, if you're not saying that you don't want to take the side of Izuku Midoriya, you're making a massive mistake, because everybody has seen it, and a lot of the students have seen it as well, that Izuku Midoriya gets massive benefits from being around other people. And on top of that, he gets massive benefits from basically, or he gives others massive benefits of their quirks. So when a lot of people would decide, you know what, I'm not going to be on Izuku's team because of the 1,000,000 points, that was going to be a really bad choice. Because guess what? Now we have Izuku Midoriya, Tokiyami, Mei Hatsume, and Ochako Uraka. And Tokiyami and Ochako have no restrictions for the most part on their quirks. Tokiyami with Dark Shadow isn't as, if not affected at all, from the light or the massive amount of light. And even so, it seems as if Tokiyami is now able to channel a stronger version of Dark Shadow, allowing him to basically just obliterate or defend anybody who comes near. And Izuku continues to fend everybody off, and it's a very easy feat, in which Tokiyami, after they successfully win, of course, he would tell Izuku that he's never felt that much power and that much freedom. Normally he's worried that Dark Shadow will go crazy and start rampaging, but that was like a different feeling, a different chance, a different stage that he was able to show himself as and feel like. And he tells him that as a hero, he's going to be a different level of hero, in which Izuku nods and says that he hopes so. And that's the choice and the lane that he wants to go down. He wants to be the greatest hero alive, so much better than even All Might himself. And even if it might not be in the same way that All Might is, he's going to make sure that he is the greatest hero. And he is the greatest hero anybody has ever seen. And that might include, you know, raw strength and raw power and all these crazy feats, but it also will include being able to allow others to be at a different crazy level that they never would have been in the first place. Now, with that said, this does lead them to the one-on-one battles, and let's just say this does bode well massively for Izuku Midoriya. I mean, the first fight is Shinso, and Shinso does try to mock him and say these things, but when Izuku actually responds to him, yeah, the voice has no effect. And you might be saying, well, that's crazy. Well, why is that? Well, it's outwardly because of the pride that a Spartan has, or Izuku has in this case. Izuku doesn't want to lose. So when his mind starts getting kind of taken over a little bit, he immediately has this Spartan-like roar within him. Aura sparks off like crazy, and it shows. Like, even the people around can just feel chills going down their body as if they fear him massively. Izuku did not allow Shinso to take over his mind, as he would charge forward and kick Shinso out of the arena in a matter of a split second. Izuku would look up and ask people and ask everybody, are they not entertained? That he's going to continue to show what a true Spartan is capable of, and he'll continue to show what he can do right here and right now. But honestly, his hardest and most difficult challenge is still up and coming, and that is Shoto Todoroki. Now, you might be wondering, why is this one of his hardest challenges? Well, Shoto Todoroki has some of the craziest long-range ice attacks, and on top of that, Izuku doesn't have weaponry. Izuku doesn't have his actual weaponry, his shields and stuff like that, that would allow him to break and shatter the ice that is shot at him. So, in turn, Todoroki would have massive advantages against Izuku. But Izuku, through just pure willpower, would struggle his way through the ice. Yes, it's slowing him down, but as he would scream toward the air and letting his Spartan rage go off, he would charge through the ice. Even a massive glacier would come over him and everybody would think it's over. But as he would crawl through the ice toward Todoroki, everybody would be completely shocked and everybody would have chills running down their spine. What kind of monster is this guy? This is awesome. They would all scream and think that this is awesome. They chant his name. They chant Izuku Midoriya. They chant the Spartan. They say it over and over again, like the Spartan or Izuku Midoriya or anything he would go by, chanting his name over and over again. And as this happens, as these people cheer for him, he's getting stronger, pushing through the ice, barreling his way through everything, and eventually he would reach Todoroki. He would grab Todoroki by the shirt, slam him on the ground as ice would begin to trickle up his body, and Izuku would throw Todoroki so hard that he basically smashes into the outside wall, falling on the outside. Izuku would have ice crystals and crystallization all over his body, but he would break free eventually, and he would kind of shrug them off, and he would have to sit down and rest for a second because that was brutal. He even goes over to help Todoroki up because he tells Todoroki, like, that was one of the greatest displays of power that he's ever seen. And he tells Todoroki that if he used his fire side, if he used that other side, that he's not so sure if he would have made it through this battle. And Todoroki tells him that he would never have used that fire side, but Izuku says that if he ever decides to utilize it, he might even give him for a run for his money. And to think about it, seriously, think about using that other side. I mean, truly, there is nothing to lose, and truly, that is his power. Trust me, he would know. Izuku points at himself and says that even he questions the power that it comes within and how humane it is to a large extent. But he tells him to never let himself hold himself back and restrict the power that was gifted to him, even if it was gifted to him through kind of messed up and unfortunate means. In which Todoroki would look at him oddly and ask how he knows that, in which Izuku says that he can tell when people have weirdly placed anger, tell when people have kind of a messed up vibe to them. And he says that he looks at his father, looks at Endeavor, and he could tell that he is no hero, that he is furthest from a hero like All Might. Izuku would help Todoroki up, get him to Recovery Girl for the most part, and tell him that he's going to win this whole thing and make sure that Todoroki's loss doesn't look too bad on him. Todoroki would laugh at this a little bit and tell him to get out of here and hurry up and prepare for his next fight, in which Izuku would take on Tenya Ida, but this is not much of a fight, easily being able to defeat him, and it would be very similar when he faces off with Bakugo. Bakugo may have adjusted to a certain extent, but his explosions and stuff like that aren't on the level of what Todoroki's flames and ice would have been, and how just monumental those things are, how much ice he can produce and how much fire he would have been able to produce if he could utilize it. Now, on top of that, Izuku has dealt with Bakugo's explosions for a long time, and he has grown kind of just more resistant to those explosions. It's more of like a what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of situation. So he's able to defeat Bakugo even easier than he did Todoroki. Actually, way easier than he did Todoroki, because Todoroki, well, he had some, he had some freaking good things, or really powerful things that he was capable of doing. Now, this would, of course, lead them to the rewarding part of the ceremony, where you give the number one person, or the person who won everything, that being Izuku Midoriya, and everybody would cheer on Izuku. They would say, like, it was so great, and that they knew that he was going to be able to do it, and that was so impressive, and blah, 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 and blah. All that stuff, all the normal stuff they would probably say, right? Now, this would lead them on to figuring out, obviously, their hero names, which Izuku would take on the hero name of the Spartan, thinking Green Spartan, not really his favorite thing. He'll pass on that. So he decides to just go by the Spartan, which is something that he feels is pretty damn cool in his opinion. So that's something he decides to do. And then, of course, he then would go on to check out his letters he would get and all of the above on different things that he could join, or different internships that he could join, in which he does get quite a few different requests and different people reaching out. But there's one person that really catches his eye, that being Endeavor, in which he would be confused by this, but then he would look over to see Todoroki looking at him, and Todoroki nodding and then looking back away. Izuku would smirk slightly and would circle Endeavor's agency pretty deeply, thinking that type of internship would be really good for him, even if he doesn't learn as much as, well, he could. He can still get in the head of the so-called number 2 hero, who's not really a hero in the book of Izuku. At least he doesn't show true, a true fighting spirit in a way. Like, he's not a true hero, and that's something Izuku basically searches after. In which eventually he would learn that Todoroki is going to be joining him, and it seems as if Todoroki took the idea of utilizing his fire side to heart with Izuku. So when they would go with Endeavor, they would do a little bit of training where Izuku and also Todoroki would work together and fight each other and stuff like that. And he would actually be able to utilize his fire side during this time as well. And of course, Izuku, would actually be able to use like his shield and his staff and stuff like that. So it would make it so that Izuku would definitely have the upper hand, just having those defensive like items, the defensive like weapons. But of course, this would allow Todoroki to basically work on his power, his strength, his abilities, and stuff like that. This would lead them, of course, to Hosu City, and as always would lead them to taking on the Hero Killer, which they would get there on time. And Izuku flat out tells Todoroki that all he needs to do is stay behind him. Let him be his shield, and this right here, this guy, this ugly looking guy, he's nothing. In which he slams his spear on the ground as the sword tip comes out of the staff, right? And Izuku would point it toward the Hero Killer, and the Hero Killer would say that no real hero would be looking to kill his opponent, but Izuku tells him that who said anything about killing, in which Izuku would basically make it so that Hero Killer would have to respond to the jabs that he's throwing in terms of the sharp spear, but Izuku has no intention of actually trying to kill the Hero Killer. He just wants to make it so that the Hero Killer has to respond properly. And with, of course, the effect that his quirk does to other people, this makes it so Tenya Ida is getting up a lot quicker, and also Todoroki seemingly has a even better balance and even better firepower with his flames and his ice. And with the overwhelming power of Todoroki, and also the flat out great martial arts and the unwavering just kind of willpower of Izuku, it seems as if, well, Stain is falling behind. Stain is getting bashed into the ground, bashed into the walls, and as he latches, Izuku latches Stain to his shield and points him toward Todoroki, Todoroki would shoot fire and ice both and basically infused at him, and it would absolutely incapacitate him, as Izuku would throw him to the side as he would get covered in ice, and they would make sure that the Hero Killer is pinned down. Izuku would put away his spear as he would just hold his shield on his arm, and he would tell Todoroki that he did a hell of a job. And he looks at Tenya Ida and tells him to stop doing stupid stuff like that. Don't ever do anything like that ever again. And he's dead serious. In which he would look back toward the alleyway as Endeavor would come spiraling through, as they would tell Endeavor that they captured the hero killer, in which, of course, Endeavor would end up having to take the credit because, you know, you could get in some massive trouble. You can get in some really, really massive trouble if you don't give the hero, the actual hero, legal hero, you could say, the credit in this scenario. This would lead to the ending of their internships, and Izuku would be a little bit bummed by this because he did enjoy the time that he had with Endeavor's kind of internship, and also with Todoroki, and kind of working with him as well. But he now knows that Todoroki is one hell of a capable future hero, and he tells him that flat out. Of course, Izuku, he's kind of a hard ass. I'm not gonna lie. He's kind of messed up, and sometimes he's brutally honest. If he thinks that you're a wimp, he'll call you a wimp. If he thinks that you're cool and you can fend for yourself, he'll say that as well, right? And he basically commends Todoroki for being or having a warrior spirit, in which Izuku, that's just how he is, and that's the way he's going to approach things. And he's gonna also berate Tenya for doing stupid stuff as well, and that's what he was able to do. And this would lead them to basically, figuring out that whole thing with Yue and the whole thing with Tenya Ida, but then also lead them to their final exams. Their final exams would be pretty basic, right? You have the written portion, which is very simple, but then you have the practical, which the practical would involve them fighting teachers. So who's going to take on Izuku? Well, of course, Izuku will have a partner, being that it's going to be Izuku and Bakugo, and it seems like All Might himself wants to take on the duo of Izuku and Bakugo. And Izuku tells Bakugo flat out that if he does not allow them to work together, that they will lose. They will. And that is the reality of it. He's just going to be honest that if they don't work together properly, and if they don't work together really at all, they will never win. They just won't. In which Bakugo kind of scoffs at this, but he actually decides to listen to Izuku. And here's the reason why. The main reason why he decides to actually listen mostly to Izuku is that, well, Izuku actually beat him in the UA Sports Festival. So he's not too prideful on the fact that, oh, I didn't get to fight Izuku and prove that I'm better. Izuku proved that he's better. And Bakugo is striving to be better than Izuku now. So he's going to give a little bit more respect now, and he's going to make sure that he falls in line just a tad. And he knows that with the help of Izuku, his explosions are going to be even stronger. So a 2-on-1 against All Might, hell, they might even be able to win. In which the fight would begin pretty quickly throughout the city, as Izuku would charge forward, taking the brunt of the attacks from All Might. And immediately, Bakugo would follow up with an explosion, and that explosion, well, that would stagger All Might backwards. An explosion that normally wouldn't even lay a little tiny dust petal on All Might actually staggers him back. Izuku would smirk at this and would slam All Might into a building, dragging him across it, as he would take his staff and slam it on All Might's leg, and then eventually try to basically immobilize All Might, attacking the limbs of All Might, right? Attacking the arms, attacking the legs, trying to slow him down entirely. And then as Bakugo continues to berate All Might with explosions, All Might tries to take out Bakugo, but as he throws a punch toward Bakugo, guess who's there? Ready to block and tank the damage. Izuku blocks with his shield, as seemingly his shield continues to reverberate and actually pushes all of that right back at All Might, sending All Might right back into one of the buildings that Izuku is trying to hold him onto. And immediately, Izuku is ready. Izuku tells Bakugo that it's time, as he would slam his shield once again, pounding on it as if it's a signal, but it's really an ability where it's going to allow Izuku to tank even more damage, or that's what it feels like, at least. Or maybe it's just a bunch of adrenaline basically getting pumped through his body, allowing him to take more damage. Now, Izuku would block the next punch, and out of nowhere, let's just say a gauntlet would get pulled and the pin would get pulled out as this massive explosion. An explosion that almost encapsulates a giant building that they're right next to, would cover All Might. Izuku would hold All Might right where that explosion is, pushing him back into it, as he would tell Bakugo that he thinks it's time for them to take off. As they would run toward the exit, as they would look back, and Bakugo would look back as well just a little bit, as All Might is currently brushing off the explosion. His suit and his body slightly burned and actually hurting quite a bit, but they realized during this fight that it was just going to be a battle of longevity. So they decided that it would be best for them to try and stagger All Might massively enough so that they can just head the hell out. In which Izuku would smirk at this a little bit, saying that normally he would be against the idea of running. He doesn't like the idea of running, but he's going to have to swallow his pride right now, at least for the moment, so that they can get out of here and escape. Plus, it's not necessarily running when this guy doesn't really take much damage. They would look at All Might as he's chasing him down, and Izuku would smirk, saying that this is the first time he's actually had fun in a long time, and it's kind of different. This doesn't really feel like a warrior's environment. It feels like, you know, a young hero or a young hero student actually trying to become a hero. Of course, Izuku wouldn't be like saying this out loud. He'd be thinking about this, and he would think to himself like, this is the first time he's actually had fun on this journey to being a hero. I mean, outside of, you know, like bashing in some skulls, because of course that's fun. But at the end of the day, he realized that All Might was no joke, and he's not quite strong enough to do what he wanted to do, at least for now. Now they would head out, and they would be victors in this final exam, and this would allow them to qualify to go to the forest training camp. And the forest training camp, well, that's just another place where Zuko's gonna get stronger and stronger, and a place that he's going to be able to show off even more of the powers that his quirk grants him, because let's just say this, the forest training camp might just have an invasion, at least an invasion that won't be your typical one, because without Kurogiri, well, the villains are going to have to make a choice. Are they going to go in just blind, go in and hope that they have brought in more or enough power to actually secure being able to exterminate or hurt some of the people there? Or maybe they'll just bring a little bit more reinforcements than last time. Well, you're gonna have to find out what happens in the next part of What If Deku Had a Spartan Quirk. Izuku Midoriya is ready to train like hell at the forest training camp. And frankly, this is what excites him. This is what makes his blood pump. I mean, at the end of the day, he loves the idea of trying to train and get stronger, and the forest training camp is going to allow him to do that. So when they get there and they do their usual, you know, training within the forest with, you know, defeating the sand or ground-like monsters and stuff like that, he would get some solid training in. Even for the first time, training with Kirishima. Kirishima is a very durable person, and Izuku has now learned a way to enhance people, even though he is sparring or fighting against them. So that's what he does. He actually enhances Kirishima as if they are in a friendly spar, and Kirishima is able to use his hardening quirk to a totally different level. And on top of that, he's able to use his quirk or his hardening quirk to a more or a higher level, but also the fact is he's able to actually use that quirk to be more durable, to have more stamina involved with it, and all of the above. Like, he's able to do quite a few things with his quirk now, since it's more enhanced than usual. And this is where they would just go at it. I mean, him and Izuku would just go blow for blow, and they would do their absolute best to just see what their limitations are of their own quirks. See how far Kirishima's quirk could go, see how far Izuku's quirk, to go or can go, and so on and so forth. I mean, they would train like absolute hell. But eventually, some people or some villains would arrive through portals. But these portals would not be your typical portals, because Kirogiri is already in capture and is under investigation, so he's currently not actually a part of any of this. But it seems like All For One has open portals, or, well, nobody knows it's All For One necessarily, but he has open portals for the League of Villains. They would invade the forest training camp, and Izuku would make sure that the kid on top of the hill is okay. And before you know it, he would arrive on top of that hill, and he would see that Muscular is actually there trying to basically threaten and honestly try to kill the kid. And that's horrible. That's a horrible thing. So Izuku says that he'll handle this. I mean, he even enhances the kid to the point where the kid's actually able to utilize his quirk that hasn't really been of much use at all. Like, he hasn't been able to really use it at all, but he knows he's able to somewhat use water, at least to a mild extent, right? Like, he's able to somewhat use it. And that's what he does. He's able to utilize the water to help Izuku fight Muscular, but Izuku really doesn't need the help. I mean, he absolutely destroys Muscular. Izuku would stand and just go trading punches with Muscular, and every hit that Izuku absorbs, he's able to give back another one even stronger than the last. I mean, he refuses to let this guy, well, you know, do anything at all. And Izuku makes it extremely known that, well, there is no way around this, that he is going to lose right here and right now. There's no way he's going to stand here and defeat him. There's no way he will defeat the Spartan. He will not be able to defeat someone that is basically a Spartan. He will not be able to defeat him or Izuku that is currently standing in front of him. And he absolutely destroys Muscular. I mean, at the end of the day, Muscular is really strong, but he's also just extremely lacking in terms of just raw martial arts. Izuku's strength, his durability, his ability to overcome the odds, and on top of that, he is an expert at martial arts. I mean, there is no way Muscular is going to keep up with him, and there's no way Izuku is going to allow this little kid to get hurt, because, yes, don't get me wrong, he has Spartan tendencies, but he's not going to allow a child to get hurt when the child has done nothing wrong, even in the slightest. So he's going to make sure that he handles the business, his business, to the best of his ability. He needs to make sure that Muscular stays down for good and that he doesn't hurt anyone else. And that's exactly what happens. He doesn't hurt anyone else. At least Muscular is completely out of commission and can't do a single freaking thing. Izuku would then take Koda away to the safety for the most part to make sure that everything is alright, and he flat out just, you know, goes along his way of trying to help his classmates, but eventually they get a hold of somebody. They get a hold of Katsuki Bakugo. Now, in the UA Sports Festival, he showed subtle signs of being kind of super villainy, kind of. And at the end of it, he was a little bit more tame, but he was still rowdy enough to put the alarms on, you could say. Now, while they were here, they also wanted to grab one Izuku Midoriya, but it's pretty obvious that it's not going to be that simple. There's just no way that they're going to be able to stop this kid or get this kid to basically listen properly. And, well, let's just say they decide to stray away from that plan. And they actually are able to capture Katsuki Bakugo, even though Izuku does put a beating and capture some of the villains that were currently there. And luckily, well, at least for the League of Villains, that they had some extra Nomus to spare, so they actually sent them over there as well to slow down Izuku during this fight. Izuku had the full opportunity, if not stopped by the Nomus, to eliminate Shigaraki. If he wanted to take that and he wanted to get rid of him permanently, he definitely could have. But Izuku kind of slipped under the radar a little bit and was in an unfortunate spot, so he wasn't unfortunately able to get to that point to completely stop him, you could say. Now, this would lead to obviously Bakugo being captured, everybody leaving, and everybody trying to find the location of Bakugo. And Izuku would be asking everybody how to find Bakugo, how to find Katsuki Bakugo, because they've kind of made amends, right? Izuku doesn't necessarily like the guy, but they made somewhat of amends where he wants to make sure that the guy's okay, and he's going to make sure these villains pay. And Izuku would have full intentions of just going and saving Bakugo on his own. Shoot, if he brought a couple students, he would do that as well. And he would have full intentions of doing so. He would grab his spear, his shield, and get on his armor, and he would immediately be thinking to himself that it's truly no man left behind. I mean, yes, he got captured, and yes, maybe this isn't necessarily the Spartan way. Maybe getting captured is a show of weakness, but it's a different world and a different time. He's obviously looked into the Spartans. He's obviously taken part of their code as his own, and he does modify it to the way he thinks it should be based on, well, being a hero. And before Izuku is actually able to sneak off and leave, he actually is approached by somebody. He's approached by Shota Aizawa, and Aizawa is about to tell him something, but Izuku cuts him off, saying that he's not going to convince him otherwise. He's not going to convince him to go not save Bakugo. He doesn't care if the other heroes are going. It doesn't matter. He needs to save his friend. In which Aizawa nods and says he knows. And he knows he doesn't throw around that friend word very loosely, even though him and Bakugo had his, well, you know, their down and ups, mostly downs, really. But he would then pull something out of his pocket and give it to Izuku, and Izuku would look at it and see that it's a provisional hero license, in which Aizawa tells him that he has far accelerated everybody else, and it took a lot of convincing and a lot of footage, but he was able to convince those, well, who give these out to basically give him one, especially because he's going on a siege and a raid to take down the League of Villains with the other heroes, and he needs to be on the forefront, just like a Spartan would be. Izuku nods and smirks slightly and says that he won't let him down, he won't let anybody down. And Izuku would go on this raid to save Bakugo, and, well, he would lead the forefront, and Endeavor would be watching this, and he would be complaining, saying that this is BS. Like, why is Izuku or this kid being able to do this, but he's not able to siege in as well? In which everybody would explain why, and yada yada yada, whatever, right? But Endeavor doesn't really hear any of this. I mean, he is just, you know, livid about it for whatever reason he has. Now, this would lead to Izuku leading the charge through the wall, and they would break through, and all the heroes would feel this surge of power, and that would include Bakugo, as he would send explosions at the other villains that are there, and the other villains would begin to get battered. I mean, knocked out almost instantaneously, and they would have to be saved by, well, one all for one. Portals opening up, Bakugo being taken through, but Izuku not hesitating at all, jumping through the portal as well. He would land on the ground, slamming his spear into the ground as the sharp part of the spear, or the blade, would basically come out of the bow staff, and he would look toward All for One. He would look at Bakugo and then look around to see the League of Villains also there, but mostly out cold. He would slam his shield and tell All for One that today is where he falls. Today is where he will lose. Bakugo's explosion quirk would start crackling as if he's about to go head to head with All for One with Izuku Midoriya, but before they could even do anything, they would hear a voice come charging in and jump in and slam on the ground, and he would say, "I am here," in which Izuku would look over and he would smirk, saying that it seems like All Might wants the rematch with the one and only All for One. But this rematch is not going to be on fair terms because, well, let's just say heroes aren't going to give a fair fight necessarily, just like the villains would never do so as well. In which Izuku tells Bakugo to make sure those villains over there can't get up. Then make sure if they get up that he puts them right back down. Bakugo smirks as he can feel that his explosions are even stronger than before. maybe Izuku's quirk has evolved even further and has now, well, enhanced him even more. Bakugo is happy about this, but also a little bit frustrated at the fact he can't do this on his own, at least not yet. Izuku would then lead the charge against All For One with All Mights, and this would empower All Might. So much so that All Might would feel almost in his prime, if not in his prime. All Might would feel extremely powerful, and Izuku would feed off the power that All Might has. Tendrils or black tendrils would get sent at him as he would block them away, shattering them to pieces. Izuku feeding off the strength that All Might currently has, and feeding off the strength that All Might has in general, and basically the quirks around him, allowing him to be even stronger. Izuku would charge toward All For One, bashing him, and then bashing him again, and then also stabbing his spear into his leg, slamming him on the ground. All Might would follow up with a Detroit Smash, landing flush to the jaw of All For One. All Might would make it very clear that this is for his mentor, this is for Nana Shimura, and he's going to make sure that he pays for it, at least with his entire life in prison and behind bars. Izuku would dive toward All For One, slamming once again All For One on the ground, as All Might follows up with another punch over and over again. It seems like they're both in sync, and it seems like All For One has no chance of even getting up. He's staggered. He can't even breathe. He looks to his side to try and save his protege in Shigaraki, trying to put some sort of a portal, but as he does, Bakugo immediately grabs Shigaraki, throwing him up to avoid the portal, and explodes as slamming him in a different direction. All For One can't muster the strength to actually send another portal, and it seems like the League of Villains will fall right here. All For One would struggle, trying to give all his power to one single punch, but as he throws that punch and All Might goes to block it, well, it seems like the Spartan would jump in front, blocking it as well, sending all of the power that All For One had right back at him. As All Might would then see a staggered All For One about to absolutely crumble to his knees, and he would land his United States of Smash, landing it clean as he would knock out entirely, and the League of Villains would be on the ground entirely defeated. Izuku would pound his spear and then pound his shield, and he would basically chant out chant out different things over and over again as he continues to pound on his shield, making extremely loud noises. Now, this would then lead to the imprisonment of the League of Villains, and also lead to, well, Izuku flat out being massively prepared for anything to come. They kind of go on to basically work on hero-like super moves and stuff like that, and Izuku works on a move he's been trying to master, something that is pretty freaking epic but pretty damn hard to do, jumping straight into the air and then basically crashing down on a long distance. He doesn't know how he's able to do it, but for now he's able to do it kind of short distances as he jumps up in the air and crashes down and mowing down over an area. But overall, he basically is learning how to do this and getting a little bit more strength in the process. Now, what is next is normally the Provisional Hero License exam. But Izuku already has his Provisional Hero License, and initially he thought he would have to go through another testing period, but it seems like they really did vouch for him so heavily that they told him, like, this is going to be your license now, or your Provisional Hero License now. Like, you have shown and proven plenty, and have proven everything, especially in the fight with All For One. So he's actually good to go, at least good to go in terms of his Provisional Hero License, and this would lead him to being able to be involved with Sir Night-Eye's agency a little bit sooner. And we know what all of this is going to trend to, and that's fighting against the one and only Overhaul. Now, Overhaul is a absolute terrifying foe, at least to an extent, right? Overhaul is pretty damn scary, and Izuku, well, and his personality, especially on this patrol, would make him so struggle out of his mind on the idea of not just blasting Overhaul straight into the wall and beating him senseless. And the only reason why he didn't is because Mirio basically told him before this countless times that if they run into trouble, that he should avoid it at all costs. Avoid the trouble entirely. In which this would irritate the hell out of Izuku. I mean, Izuku wants to put this guy down, but he would avoid the trouble, even if it means letting that monster take the little girl back once again. But he tells Mirio that he better promise that they will do anything to get her back, because if they don't, and she has a scratch on her after, he is going to hurt him extremely badly. Like, extremely badly. Mirio is terrified of Izuku. Like, the eyes, his physique, I mean, he is freaking terrified. I mean, Mirio tells him again, like, don't worry, like, we are going to get her back. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. And maybe he's doing it out of self-preservation. Maybe he's doing it because he actually believes it. But either way, he is still pretty damn terrified. Now, this would lead to them planning and setting up and getting ready for a siege on the base of the Shihazaikai. And this raid, just overall, would be a lot simpler. And the reason for it is because they have the Spartan mentality. Izuku would stand in front of the raid as the warrant is read off, and he would begin to chant and slam his spear on the ground and stomp on the ground, making some sort of rhythmic pattern. As he does so, everybody's just quirks would be enhanced, and everybody would feel energized, would feel basically stamina and adrenaline to its max potent ability, and all of them would go charging in. The villains that would show face would be defeated almost instantly. Even a giant monstrous man who is a huge creature would be defeated so much easier by Ryukyu and Mount Lady and whoever else that is currently there. Everybody would be extremely surging in power, and Overhaul would realize that he needs to escape ASAP. But there's one person hunting him down extremely quickly, and that is Mirio. Izuku watches as Mirio phases through every single wall, flying basically through everything, and eventually arriving at Overhaul. Izuku tries to still get to where Mirio is, but Mirio is way ahead of schedule. But the thing is, Mirio realized that he is in full capability with the help of Izuku, of course, and his quirk enhancement basically as the Spartan, that he is going to be able to obliterate Overhaul on his own. And he makes sure that Overhaul feels this, because as he dives toward, well, Overhaul, he begins to beat on him so easily. Overhaul can't even touch him. Now, it might sound crazy, but Overhaul, or excuse me, Mirio is actually able to utilize his fists and his, well, punching ability even when he's permeated. So he can actually pick up, he can actually move, he can actually hit people while he's in full pure permeation. And as he does this, as he beats on Overhaul, the last ditch effort is to shoot Eri with a quirk erasing bullet. Now, Mirio would dash over to save her, but instead of tanking the bullet himself, he would just move her out of the way, dashing in after, knocking out the man that shot the bullet, and he would continue his onslaught on Overhaul, eventually to the point where Overhaul was out cold with no reinforcements to truly help him and no way to get out of the current predicament that he really was in. Overhaul falls right here, and as Izuku walks through, as his shield clatters off the wall, he would look to see that Mirio had it handled. He would holster his shield and his spear, and he would look toward Mirio, and he would nod. It seems like you took my words seriously, Mirio. In which Mirio would nod as well and say that Izuku did all of this, really and truly. He gave him the boost that he needed to finish the job quicker than, well, anybody could have, really. And he was able to fly through and just save who they wanted to save. In which Izuku nods and says that's what matters at the end of the day. All that matters is the partners that stand next to you in the feat of war. In which Izuku would tell him that everything's gonna be alright. And as they cuff Overhaul, And as they pick up Eri to basically have her leave now, everybody in the Shiha Zaikai base is already defeated in a matter of maybe 10 minutes, maybe even less than that. Defeated extremely quickly, and Izuku didn't even get his hands on Overhaul, which disappoints him a little bit, but still, he knows that it was for the best anyways. They would all head back to the agencies, and everybody would regroup, and they would all talk about their victory or their succeeded mission, in which they congratulate everybody, but Mirio even tells them that this was not going to be possible without Izuku Midoriya, that he is hero ready, and he may not have an actual license just yet, but he is the closest to hero ready, the closest first year he's ever seen, and frankly the closest hero student he's ever seen, barring any year. He doesn't care if you're first, third, or second. He, right here, the Spartan, is the most hero ready out of them all. But there's a little bit more to come with obviously some training with UA High School, but also maybe some unexpected villains or villain that may be laying dormant for the moment, that may use its last-ditch efforts and its loyalty to the one and only All For One to try to release All For One in a last-ditch effort. But that is for the finale of What If Deku Had a Spartan Quirk. Izuku Midoriya has helped take down one of the strongest, most powerful villains, well, in Japan. And now he goes back to his normal high school things. And everything feels kind of stale. Yes, Izuku would go on to trade with his classmates, and he would go on to do certain things like that, and he would have even a tournament with Class 1B versus Class 1A, and to be honest, he felt a little bit out of place. And it's not because he doesn't think that he should be here training with other heroes and stuff like that, or future heroes at that, but there's just something missing. It's as if this crave, this urge, this want for war is like hounding at him. But what he doesn't know is that it's not that it's hounding at him, and it's not that he wants war so badly. It's that war is calling to him quicker than you could possibly imagine. And it seems as if something is actually on the horizon, and to him, he thinks that he is just fiending for it. That he just wants something bad to happen, but that's not the case. His senses, his Spartan senses, are actually going off, basically telling him that something is coming, and well, there is something coming. Now, for starters, Izuku would go through kind of just working with his agency, being that of his work study, and that of Sir Nine-Eye, excuse me, and it would be pretty interesting. It would be pretty basic, but pretty interesting. He would get some, minor things done. He would help out with patrols, and they would even come across and learn of something known as the Meta Liberation Front, which basically he's able to help out and do things in that regard with the siege of the Meta Liberation Front. But for the most part, the Meta Liberation Front is kind of like on its own. Like there's nothing really going on there specifically. And frankly, they were kind of just on their own, doing their own thing. And it wasn't until a specific event that kind of just was out of the ordinary. It seems as if something occurred where they were staying, and it led to the other heroes finding out where they were and basically bringing them in because, well, they are kind of guilty of many crimes that they actually ended up getting away with and stuff like that, and being able or basically vacating an entire city to a certain extent, right? Now, this isn't even the big issue at front, though. Izuku still feels as if there's nothing kind of going on, that he's missing something, that he's missing this kind of crazy war-like scenario. But it's not that he's missing it, it's that it crawls closer and closer. So after the town is sieged and after everything is all said and done, it seems as if Well, there's whispers of something occurring and something brewing at a nearby mountain. But what they don't know is that nearby mountain is no mountain. It's a monster. And when the heroes would go there to check out what's happening, well, they would have a bit of a rude awakening. They would have an awakening where, let's just say, there is a scary being by the name of Gigantomachia charging through them. And Gigantomachia lays havoc and knocks out a lot of the heroes. But it seems like Gigantomachia has plans that he is moving forward with, plans that he is actually trying to execute. He begins to run forward as if he is not stopping, or there is nothing that is going to stop him. And let's just say he's headed straight for one area and one place entirely. And that is the prison where All For One and Shigaraki is currently being held at. It seems as if this monster is loyal to All For One himself and is currently sprinting toward that prison. As Gigantomachia sprints toward the prison, everybody tries to stop him, every single person, but eventually you would get a line of heroes ready to go. Izuku and all of his classmates, and that would include also other heroes as well, people like Mirako, people like Endeavor, and even All Might himself. Yes, All Might with his last little bit of embers that he wasn't able to basically use entirely against All For One the first time, and Izuku's support, since he's able to help All Might, there still is a symbol of peace, at least just temporarily, for a little bit longer. And of course, this would lead to them waiting for Gigantomachia to show up, and eventually the monster would do just that. The monster would show his face charging through, and kind of just enraged and going to save his master, quote unquote. And Izuku would tell everybody to hold their ground. He would pound the ground and pound his spear as he slams his shield, and it seems as if a giant shield goes in front of all of them, and as Gigantomachia clashes with them, they all push back with all of their might. Gigantomachia is trying to overpower them, but since they have some of the strongest beings and heroes there, they're able to hold him off. Izuku would then throw a spear into the sky, as spears would rain down on Gigantomachia, puncturing at least him to a certain extent, drilling him to the ground. All Might, Endeavor, many others like Mirako, Bakugo, and so many would go to clash with Gigantomachia, laying blow after blow, trying to give all that they have. But it seems like this monster has one hell of a set of durability, and things begin to get extremely difficult, especially when Nomus would come out of nowhere. A lot of Nomus, including high-end Nomus, would begin to appear, and many of them would begin to trying to cut through the rest of the heroes. But with the help of Izuku and his power boosting like Quirk, basically his Spartan morale, he continues to cheer on as a lot of these heroes continue to use their power boost itself to eliminate the Nomus to a large degree. Izuku, though, can tell that Gigantomachia is definitely making some ground, and if he reaches the prison, God knows what's going to happen. So before Gigantomachia can actually reach the prison, Izuku lets out his wild card. And this wild card is a bit odd, but it's something that will actually be beneficial. So he tells a lot of the reporters to start live streaming what's happening. He tells them all that they need a live audience and they need to be able to hear it through speakers or some sort in general. So he tells them to do so, and that's exactly what they do. And as the speakers begin to play, as all these people begin to cheer for their heroes, Izuku can feel a surge of power and energy grow over him. And as he feels this power, the entirety of Japan cheering them on and cheering him on, well, Izuku begins to grow in size, or at least a kind of more astral version of him begins to grow in size. Yes, it's not actually him, but it's kind of like a shadowy version of him growing in size. He's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually he towers even as tall as Gigantomachia. And this right here is where things get crazy, because Izuku clashes with Gigantomachia, showing the strength that this astral projection type of being of a Spartan, truly how powerful it is. And as the other Nomus begin to fall, and as the other Nomus begin to cut down in size, Izuku continues to beat on Gigantomachia, smashing into him over and over and over again, and eventually wrestling him to the ground. And Gigantomachia is struggling, trying to get out. But as this happens, well, it seems like Midnight realizes the situation and tries to overwhelm him with her pheromones. And as well she does this would greatly help Izuku and the others, so much so that it would almost put him to sleep. But with the punches of All Might, the flames of Endeavor, Todoroki and also Bakugo shooting their full power blast, with Izuku on top of Gigantomachia, raining hell and grabbing and raining spears on top of him. And as everything combined, the strength of every single hero there is combined, well, Gigantomachia would fall victim to the onslaught of the heroes, and he would be out cold, if not almost on his last leg of life. The last-ditch effort of the villains to get out All For One and many others has been thwarted. But what happens to Izuku for the rest of his life? Well, there's questions, a lot of questions, that is going to have to be answered for the Spartan and, well, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya goes throughout his high school pretty normally. He works with Sir Night-Eye's agency a lot of the time, but to be honest, Izuku was always the one to lead the pack, always a warrior that would lead his own clan, warriors, tribe, and, well, whatever you could call it, anything you could think of, and that includes having his own hero agency. So when he's older, when he's almost basically out of high school, out of UA for the first time, he actually gets offered a position and gifted something by All Might. By now, All Might's already retired and kind of gone away, but he is offered something by All Might, and this would be his own agency, funded by Sir Night-Eye and also All Might himself, gifting the Spartan his own way of creating the perfect team for his own. Because All Might realizes that there is no one person anymore. There's a realization that was brought over him that for a long time it was him. That's who protected everybody. That's who made sure everyone was safe. It was All Might himself, and that was it. He took it upon himself to do everything. But with Izuku, well, he had a realization that it's so much more. Izuku Midoriya gives them a chance to all be powerful, to all work together and be alongside each other. Yes, Izuku is more powerful than most, and he's going to lead the forefront as always, but a Spartan never allows a man to just fall and perish, not without a complete and utter fight. And sometimes, well, if you want to beat a villain, you have to truly let out your inner warrior, because what they're gonna do, what villains will do, is they will give their complete and utter effort to make sure you either pass on or you lose that fight. A warrior will do the same exact thing, but a warrior can still maintain his morals and morality even when fighting the worst of the worst and the scum of the scum. And Izuku Midoriya could lead the heroes to a new era, an era that it's no longer going to be hero work, no longer going to be just similar, same popularity. This will be warriors, hero and heroic warriors that maybe only you would read in the books about. Izuku Midoriya will lead a new generation and will lead more and more people. And once he's available to do so, Izuku, well, he may just be known as someone even greater than All Might, but for a totally different reason. All Might himself may have been the definition and the showing of what peace looks like. He may have dropped the crime rate entirely, but Izuku will do that and even more, but through means that All Might would never do, through means of basically everyone being together and everybody working together entirely. Izuku Midoriya is going to be a different type of difference maker than All Might ever was. And people that are bad heroes, people that follow bad ideologies, well, let's just say they would fall in line, or they would fight, or they would have to face or fight the rage of a Spartan. But with that said, that is the end of What If Deku Had a Spartan Quirk. And if you enjoyed, show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And yeah, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about the pace of this series. Obviously, I decided to do a little bit different of a pace. I do get, descriptive with some things, like, some fights or some actions that I think matter, whatever, right? But depending on the circumstance, like let's for example, let me say the quirk assessment, I don't really need to go in super detail with that. I think there's certain things definitely in My Hero Academia that I don't need to sit here and yap on and on and on about. So yeah, I want to know what you guys think about the pacing. I know technically it would probably be it's going to be around the same amount of time, but I think the pacing per part is a little better. Like if I do 30 minutes an episode, at least normally 30 minutes an episode, like around 30-ish, I could get through quite a bit, and then it probably end up being like an hour-and-a-half movie or something like that. I think I like this pacing a little bit more, but still, nonetheless, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. And yeah, that's all I got to say, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.